Each one of these.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've got 6 o'clock on the nose, so we're going to go ahead and bring our meeting to order. If you will, please turn all cell phones and detectors on a solid position. I appreciate it. Ms. Ray, would you please go ahead and call the roll of City Council?
The Honorable Mayor Pro Tem James Whitmore.
Present.
The Honorable Linda J. Davis.
Present.
The Honorable Alex Heath.
Present.
The Honorable Samantha Hudson.
Present.
The Honorable Hattie Portis Jones is absent. And the Honorable Ulysses J. Smallwood is absent. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you so much. At this time, if everyone would please stand. Mr. City Administrator, would you bless us with the blessing today?
Absolutely. If you would please bow your heads. Father, as again we come before you on this day, with our heads bowed and our hearts humbled, thanking you for the gift of another day. As we gather to conduct the business of the city, Father, we ask that everything we do first and foremost is pleasing and acceptable in your sight. Please be with our elected leaders as they guide us through the decisions that need to be made. Please be with all of our first responders that risk life and limb to protect our community. Be with all of our staff who provide services, and be with our community at large. Father, we ask all of these blessings in the name of your Son, Jesus. As every heart that agreed said, amen.
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 Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members of council, you have before you a printed agenda. Can I entertain a motion to adopt the city council agenda?
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made and properly second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion carries. First item,
The first item, Mayor, is the liability insurance renewal. This request is for Mayor and Council to approve the recommended liability insurance renewal plan, which includes a transition to a self-insured liability insurance renewal for the fiscal year 24 to 25 renewal period.
Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. We appreciate your time tonight for this special call meeting. I'm going to bring up Mr. Matt Simmons. He serves as the Senior Director for the Public Sector of Gallagher, who is our new broker as it relates to our insurance. We do want to apologize for just giving you this document tonight. I can tell you, and Matt will explain in a presentation, that they have been working up until the 11th hour and trying to ensure that we get some type of coverage in reference to our liability. And so with that, I'll ask Matt to come up, and he will run through the presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have afterwards.
Thank you, Ms. Chris. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for having us this evening. As Ms. Chris said, my name is Matt Simmons. I serve as Senior Director for Gallagher's Public Sector Practice Group. With me is Scott Thomason, my partner and our Regional Practice Leader. And also joining us is Yvette Jones, who serves as the Account Manager for the City of Fairburn. This evening, we're going to talk about the property casualty insurance renewal, and as Ms. Chris said, we apologize for the late hour on it, but as we go through, we'll look through kind of the process and how we got to where we are. Skipping into really the first page, talking about Gallagher, we want to take an opportunity. This is our first introduction to Mayor and Council, so give you a little bit about who we are. So you understand kind of where we're coming from on things. Gallagher is one of the largest brokers in the nation, or excuse me, in the world, founded in 1927. We have our office is located up in Sandy Springs, up in Dunwoody. We work throughout the world on risk management, insurance, and consulting. And where Scott and I represent today is our public sector practice group, which is we are the largest broker of public sector risks in the country. We work with more local governments than any other broker. And so when Mr. Phillips and Ms. Chris brought us in and hired us as the broker, they went based on our vast experience, knowledge, and resources. If you flip onto page 3, we want to provide you all with a quick overview, again, with this our first introduction of some of who we work with here in Georgia. As you'll see, we have an extensive list of municipal, county, school, authority clients throughout the state of Georgia, to kind of give you just a brief overview there. Page 4 is, again, just a quick introduction of kind of why we're here and why we were selected to work with the city of Fairburn. Our approach is not just placing your insurance, but being far more strategic about risk. And you'll see later on in the presentation how we have a game plan to work with not just placing insurance for the city of Fairburn, but helping you manage risk, manage costs, and really improve from a risk profile standpoint, improve the overall culture of risk and safety. And this is just some information for mayor and council to understand kind of who we are and what we'll be doing with city administration. I got pages out of order. I apologize. I just realized that. If you jump to page 8 real quick, I want to talk about how we got to where we are today. This is an overview of our insurance marketing results. We had a meeting with Mr. Phillips, Ms. Chris, and team last week to talk about, in the past couple weeks, where things have been. We've been in touch since the end of January when we were named the broker. When we took over, we uncovered an unfavorable loss history for the city of Fairburn. There's a page where we'll talk about how that's really impacting things. But we were also notified as we took over your account that Travelers was non-renewing due to an unfavorable loss history, which put us into putting together a game plan that we're going to have to go out and look at all potential options for the city of Fairburn. And so what we do want to talk about on this page is we had developed kind of a go-to-market strategy of looking at multiple program structure options, from a guaranteed cost, which is what you do now, where you have small deductibles and you have a claim, insurance company pays out, really to where we're landing to a protected self-insurance program. This is a shift for the city. Once we get through some of this part, I'm going to turn things over to Scott to kind of talk a little more about the mechanics of that. But where you're really going to take on a lot more of the control and the ownership of your program and the determination of how many claims are adjudicated, how they're determined. But on the following pages, we provided the results from the market. We went out to every single guaranteed cost market, and everybody had declined based on an unfavorable loss history. So all the standard traditional markets: Travelers, Liberty Mutual, Tokyo Marine, Trident, Zurich, Gladfelter. We approached the Georgia Municipal Association. We have a partnership with GERMA, and we weren't able to find a market that was willing to take on the risk based on historical losses for the city of Fairburn. We identified some split peril programs that's where you have different carriers on different parts of your program. They weren't coming back looking at an unfavorable. They were coming back unfavorably, where costs would drive up significantly for the city. And so what we really settled in on was a protected self-insured program. And right now, I'd like to turn it over to Scott. I'm going to go back, and I apologize. I didn't realize that the pages were out of order. As Ms. Chris. Okay, well, we can blame Scott on that, because as Ms. Chris said, we've been working up to this. I think we got a copy to Mr. Phillips last night. But we'll look at page 5 here, give you kind of an overview of how the losses have impacted the ability.
Thank you, Matt. And I've been working in the municipal insurance sector since 1995. So I've been doing this for quite a while. And this was a challenging situation that you were all in based off of your past claims experience. And so when we look at the chart presented in front of you, it wasn't just you're having automobile losses. You had some employment practices losses. We had a public officials loss with a zoning ordinance matter. We had a large property loss, and we had a few other losses in the area of law enforcement, just a little bit of everything. And the insurance companies have to base their rates based off of past experience, might dictate what the future will be. Your claims experience suggested that if we can find insurance for you, then your 5-year history suggests that the insurance company should charge $1.9 million. If it was based off of 7 years, it'd be $1.4 million. Quite a big jump from where you were. You were at, well, any questions about the losses before I move forward? So this is looking backwards at your,
Just to give you a little bit of clarity from for the losses. So going back to 2022, which is the year that Scott is referencing, as you all know, that was a year of the loss of Old Campbell Courthouse when the courthouse caught fire. That loss was large. I think that was almost $1 million loss. The second one is unfortunately the untimely passing of Sergeant Astry, was also in 2022. And the third one is the lawsuit that happened between LGI Homes and the city of Fairburn. All three of those each were approximately $1 million. So with that contributed to that 3.2, 3.3 that you see in the 2022 column. So I just wanted to make sure, I know that they're telling you about the losses, but just wanted to provide a little bit of context and reference to those.
Mayor, what I would add to that is this is very similar to what we dealt with when we moved from United Healthcare to Cigna. If you recall, what necessitated that was United Healthcare declined to continue coverage. And in that instance, it was because we had several high-dollar medical claims, chronic illnesses, things of that nature. And so that necessitated that change. This is liability and not medical, but the loss versus premium dynamic is similar. So when you have high-dollar losses, the insurance company is looking at what you're paying in premiums versus what they have to pay out in losses. Campbell County Courthouse, active nature. And the other ones are kind of self-explanatory as it relates to a fatal car accident, and the last one was a lawsuit. So I just wanted to.
Yes. Could you, just for clarity's sake, what is the difference between self-insurance and what we had before? Can you clarify that for our citizens and for?
I can, and if you're ready to move on to the proposal part, I can kind of go through and walk you through that. Would that be okay?
If, I don't know, if you have other questions on this page, I can wait until you get to that section.
Thank you. I will answer that question.
Okay.
Your claims history is claims history. Just like when you're driving and you have an MVR, you have a speeding ticket, it'll last on your record for 3 years. This will last for a few years. What we do is we package together your risk profile, we make the best of it, and we go out to the markets and solicit the best deal. We think that we got a good deal. We know that there's a lot of pain with the cost going up, but it is not unheard of. This has happened before several other times in the state of Georgia. You're not the first entity to have the insurance company non-renew. They've done this to others, travelers, as well as other insurance companies. And I want to point out that the number of insurance companies writing governmental entities in Georgia has gone down from about 7 to maybe 3.
Well, let me let you go through your presentation. That way, you may end up answering several council members' questions in the process.
Okay, thank you. So as Matt alluded to, we went out to the market to look at all different types of program structures, as well as looking at splitting things up to see is there a good way to build this program up. And we solidified a program that will take you to a protected self-insured program on the casualty side. So if we look at that, what that means is that with the casualty coverages, which are public officials, law enforcement, general liability, and automobile coverage, before you had small deductibles in place for various lines of coverage, anywhere between 0 up until $10,000 or $15,000. Because of the losses that you've sustained. Not only that, it's what other losses are happening in the state. This is not all about you. This is about the entire state, and we've seen a transition of claim activity going on. And so the deductibles go from small to now we're going to take a self-insured retention. We're going to have a portion of the loss that we're responsible for, the city is, for each and every claim. So now what'll happen is the claims, instead of going to Travelers Insurance Company, they're going to go to the claims administration team, which is Gallagher Bassett, and they're going to manage the claim. You're going to have choice of counsel, and we're going to oversee the litigation cost, and we're going to manage the claim and work through staff over claims management. Instead of renting through the insurance company, you're owning the process a little bit more. It's a better route to go because you can actually have a reduced total cost of risk in the long term. But this first year, there is a transitional, it's a big dollar swing for sure. And again, as I alluded to earlier, the models suggest that your premium, if someone were to write it, would be closer to $2 million. Our total cost of risk is well below that, which is good. So if we look at your program here, on the liability side, your deductibles are going to be now what's called a self-insured retention, and you can see that it's going to go from $0 to $10,000 to $250,000 each and every claim except for automobile. Automobile is higher. It's at $400,000. $25,000 for auto physical damage. Questions on the casualty part?
I guess when I sit here and I listen to all of this, I'm processing this in a different way. When you talk about professional practice losses, to me, that entails something internal that we have to work on here in Fairburn. I don't have a lot of questions right now because I was just given this document. And I'm not in the practice of making decisions when something has just been shoved in my face the day of. So I want to continue to listen to your presentation. I think my peer had something that she was on. I want to hear, the answers to that. If I get any questions, I will go ahead and ask some questions. But I'm really interested in hearing what Councilwoman Davis' question is about the self-insurance, liability insurance, that part.
Before you ask a question, I want to give you a stat that of the top 70 most populated cities in the state of Georgia, and this is not exact, but this is a benchmark, 41 of them are in GIRMA, the GMA program. 29 are not in GIRMA. 14 of them are self-insured in a protected self-insured program similar to what we're proposing. So you're not the only city, you're not the only medium-sized city to go this route. And once you go self-insured, you typically don't go back because you enjoy that control, you enjoy the risk financing part, that it's going to be a lower total cost of risk in the long term. Earlier, I mentioned about if your claims are running at, $700,000 to $950,000 a year, then the insurance premium is going to be double that, is what the typical insurance dollar and how that works. For every 50 cents paid for an insurance dollar, it goes to claims. 35% goes to expenses, insurance company, broker, reinsurance. 15% profit. That's kind of the standard dollar. When we go to a protected self-insured model, we actually lower the administrative cost, the reinsurance cost, and therefore you don't pay as much for total cost of risk as you would with traditional insurance. I know I just threw a lot out at you, but it's better for you in the long run, in my opinion.
Can I ask a question? Your company is basically, quote unquote, like an insurance company, that you process the data from the incident or whatever like that. And so therefore you don't necessarily represent us like an attorney would, but you represent us as like an insurance company, but we are responsible for whatever comes out. Is that correct?
Yes, in similar terms, it is, we're your insurance broker acting on your behalf.
Got it.
We've set up, we also have a claims administration division. They also handle the GMA program since 1987. So we're getting that experience with understanding how immunity works and when we need to utilize that as a defense, but also set up strategies of when should we settle a claim, when should we recommend denying a claim, when do we need to pay out. That's what we're setting up, and we're setting up authority levels for them as well as your staff.
Now, what is your fees that you collect?
So our fees are, good question. Our fees are typical standard usual and customary commissions in the insurance premium. So it's paid by the insurance premiums. There's no additional fees for this.
But now, if we are self-insured, the premiums that you're talking about, where are we at on that? I'm talking about monetarily.
Great question. So if we want to refer to this page, I'll walk you through the rest of this document,
Okay.
which is the top section is your, what we call your primary package, your liability casualty coverages. Your premium last year was $510,000.
Okay.
This year, it's $665,000. Higher deductibles. Go down, the umbrella is included for excess liability. The property coverage went from $75,000 to $219,000. And we did actually, we doubled the property values. Staff did a great job of identifying the assets and making sure that we get those properly covered.
Right.
That was done, but the rates are also going up around the country with climate change.
Yeah.
So this is more so about climate change going on in the country. We also did have that large loss that had to be accounted for in the premium calculation. Cyber liability, we had actually a rate reduction on that. We'll take the win. Terrorism and active shooter coverage was added. It's our recommendation. All of our metro Atlanta accounts have that coverage. And that actually reduced your property premium because they include TRIA coverage. This is a better way to get terrorism risk coverage. And then the crime policy, you can see that actually we got a rate reduction on that. So your insurance cost went from $613,000 to $928,000. We have to add in the claims administration fee for our other division at $47,000. That's what it takes to handle the claims. That puts your fixed expenses at $975,000 compared to $613,000 last year. Then we go down to the bottom to retain loss projections. Under your old plan, your deductibles, you were paying out on average around $73,000 for your deductibles. The model suggests that it would be $380,000 in the forthcoming year, based on historical numbers. However, we've had some clients, they're not going to hit those levels, hopefully again. You're not going to have another 22. That was an anomaly, and I'm not seeing that hardly at all in my experience in all the years. So that 380 should be a lot less. And so with the things that we're working on from the safety perspective, that'll also reduce that number. It could be higher, but it could be lower. So that 380 number is a projected retained loss amount. So that brings our total cost of risk from $687,000 up to 1.35. And you go all the way over to the right in the very small print, your exposure change went up by 30%. The premium or total cost of risk went up by 97%. Your net rate change was 51%. Questions on the math or understanding those numbers?
This is an annual cost?
It is.
And is it paid on a lump sum basis, or is it like spread out over a 12-month period?
All the fixed cost, the $928,000 is payable up front. And the 47, that should be paid up front. You're going to set aside money into the self-insurance fund with Gallagher Bassett. That's $44,000, and then they'll come back and ask for money as claims are paid.
Mr. Whitmore?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions. In looking at the renewal results and your analytics and the various line of business that I'm looking at, my question would be, and I'll start with cyber liability. Now, if we as a city have things in place and we're continuously working so that we're not being hit with cyber, all right? And I know it's ransomware, social engineering, and so on and so forth, but if we had programs in place along with our IT people that are continuously monitoring, updating, and everything else, so each renewal year, will we be looking at the analytics where the net rate should be reducing even more?
So, Mr. Warren, I can speak to that. So, in 2021, the cyber market went through a massive correction. Obviously, everybody going remote in 2020, there was a massive correction because it used to be, what's your budget? How many employees do you have? Here's your quote. Now, and I that's a little tongue in cheek, but you know, in terms of for an account like the city of Fairburn, you know, Target and that, and you know, big companies, there was always a lot of underwriting. But from basic cyber, it was pretty basically underwritten. Massive shift. It was always very underpriced, and we saw 500% increases in 2021. We had one client that had a 535% increase, and it was a large entity. It was a massive premium increase for them. Since then, the trending has shown that the market rate has regulated, and that they're now charging appropriate premium based on risk exposure. But to your point, the goal is truly, I don't know that we will necessarily see rate reductions on cyber. Now, from a net rate perspective, you know, if your budget grows and we have a flat renewal, that becomes a net rate reduction. But really the goal and our hope in the cyber market is that we start to see it just kind of plateau. That it shows that it's setting, you know, maybe you get a couple percent down, 5-10% down in 2025, maybe it goes up 6% in 2026. General market fluctuation, but we really, think about it like your tax return. You actually don't ever want to return, you don't want to owe money. That way you don't give it, you know, you want it to have been kind of stable. So what we really want to see in the cyber market is stability of that rate. Now, but the more important piece to your point is, as you're continuing to do all the things, and we've already started conversations with a partner company of ours to do a real third-party risk assessment for your cyber, is improvement in overall terms and coverage. What I'd like to be able to see is actually increase your cyber limit while seeing that become a net rate decrease, that we can actually get you more coverage for less on a net perspective, if that makes sense. Or whether it's sublimits within those terms. You know, some entities have certain things sublimited based because they don't have certain cyber controls in place. And so they have reduced coverages. That's where we really want to see that. But there may be some rate reduction. I don't think that you'll ever see a 20% rate reduction on cyber once they kind of figured all that out, because it was such a painful thing in the market 3 years ago. But we really are, the hope on the cyber is to see that really regulate. You know, we got a net reduction this year, and actually there was an increase in coverage because we identified when we took over that there was trying to think of the right terminology, an unrealized limitation on your coverage that expires tonight, that we've taken that exclusion away and still are seeing that net rate reduction. So we have a better program for you here, but really the simplest thing is we want to see regulation from that rate standpoint. Never really fluctuating more than 10%, because that's where we start to get concerned about corrections.
And my additional question, and just looking at, for example, terrorism, active shooter. Now, this city has a police department where we go through active shooting drills. And so with the documentation of the active shooter drills and how we go about presenting it, staff, city, the whole gamut, what would be your explanation on reduction in that area as well?
So that's not really how that coverage is rated and is kind of reviewed. This is really, this coverage is really rated based off of your property schedule. Now, we didn't do you'll notice that your limit on here is 25 million, not 70 million. Well, we look at aggregation of locations, based on your most expensive building and what all is around it. We felt that in the event there was an event, from a property standpoint, that loss would not necessarily exceed $25 million.
So, and I'm listening very attentively. So with our city hall moving down to the campus, where the majority of our staff is now down at the campus. So all that came into play with your current presentation.
Yeah, because when we look at the cost of the buildings, that's kind of the recommendation, because we're not worried about an organized group marching down the street to shoot everybody up. And I'm just going to kind of be blunt with this. Because federal agencies are going to be aware of something like that. We're worried about the backpack. We're worried about the lone shooter. We're worried about those kind of things that someone could target the city of Fairburn, the police department, city hall, a governmental entity based on their opinion of governmental operations or what have you. That's where our focus really is.
That's a good question. I can add to that, the way that the premium is derived is based off of your property values, your spread of risk, and your geographic location. While you're not next to the airport, you're close to it. If we're 100 miles away, it's going to be a little bit lower of a rate. And it's based off of that more so of some of the individual characteristics.
And with us being one of the lowest crime-rated cities in the state of Georgia, how does that come into play?
Unfortunately, crime rates don't matter on this. It has more to do about political action, any type of religious actions with lone rangers in terms of coming in and having a shooting or having a violent act.
Megas and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay. Then my last question would be, can you explain to me the employee dishonesty? That kind of stuck out. I didn't understand that.
Blanket term, it's multiple different layers of crime coverage, but we simplify by saying blanket employee dishonesty.
If funds are stolen by employees, it'll cover up to $500,000.
Kind of following back up on Mr. Whitmore's question in the cyber liability portion of it. My question is, and I'm sure the calculation is done totally different than the way I was taught with property and casualty insurance. My question is going to be, as a result of us now having an actual IT department, how does that play in a role versus the majority of governments our size that contract IT services out, which we did, which is standard market practice?
So the way that the premiums are derived are based off of insurance company rate and adjustment for subjective criteria of underwriting and 3 loss experience. It's kind of the general rule for insurance. We talk about cyber. If you haven't had claims, which is good, it's about the controls, the underwriting subjectivity to, do you have, a firewall? Do you have MFA and some other things? Those we call cyber risk controls, those change every year. They keep getting more complex. The fact that you now have an IT department helps position for the future. A lot of this is more about prevention. We don't ever want you to have a claim. The way that the rates are developed, it'll be underwritten every year. They're going to have questions on, did you add the latest threat protection in the next year? These rates will also, could destabilize if there is a mass influx of, hacking that goes on, foreign, actors come in and, wreak havoc throughout the country.
And then the second question I have, the second category from the top, auto physical damage, ACV, see that on the expiring, can I just make sure what that acronym represents?
Actual cash value.
Okay, actual
Oh,
cash.
yeah, basically replacement cost less depreciation. And Mr. Mayor, I wanted to add, with regards to the rating on the cyber liability, it's also based off of your revenues and operating expenditures. That's really the big rating basis on that. So, that's how the cyber markets really look at, that's the first mechanism. And what I can tell you is, placing cyber insurance for 50 local governments throughout the state of Georgia, your numbers are benchmark in line with appropriate rate. I can tell you that number for the $1 million for a municipality of the size of the city of Fairburn, that's pretty much standard rate. That's going rate.
Gotcha.
That's also part of the reason why staff selected us to come in, is to help you with the risk profile. What are those things that we can do behind the scenes in terms of developing fleet safety policies and procedures, training, safety committee? Those are the things we have a lot of experience with, and why we're also hired to help implement that so that we can reduce your total cost of risk down the road.
Ms. Davis, go ahead.
Yes. I'm glad you brought up that, because it's always, prevention is awesome. So is that an additional cost, or is that included in what we see here?
Ms. Davis, if I can direct everybody to the last page. And I think that this will also speak to a comment Ms. Hudson made a little while ago about what are we doing. We laid this out for city administration in our early meetings, talking about what do we do. We put together, this was, that earlier slide talking about our Core 360 approach to risk management. Mm-hmm. We break everything out by what we call cost driver. How are we going to impact your total cost of risk? Not just the insurance cost, but the total cost, your retained losses, any expenses, things like that. We have identified areas that to deliver impact immediately. And, there's a lot on here. Mm-hmm. Everything doesn't happen year one. We look at, I'd like to think of it as you hit your low-hanging fruit, your critical needs. For example, we're already prepared to implement a fleet safety program that is designed to improve your auto losses and your auto experience right out the gate. And then we look at those strategic items that, hey, this is going to take more time because, it takes time to change culture. It takes time to turn the ship. Mm-hmm. And so we have a game plan for service. Everything listed on here and more is just included. There are things that that do have additional costs associated with it. Nothing on this page does. Anything that does is something that we talk about beforehand. If you want to do a massive special project, we talk about, hey, if we have to bring in outside vendors, we have to bring in different divisions. But everything that we're setting out to do through improving fleet, doing reviews of policies and procedures, doing benchmarking and analytics, claims analysis, TPA management, risk consulting, contractual risk consulting. Scott published a white paper a few years ago. We've always worked with multiple entities in Georgia, changing the way they enter into contracts to better protect you from potential risk brought on by a vendor. All of this is included. There is no additional cost associated with this. And I wanted to offer one thing to, or actually, no, you go.
I just want to say that we're also very transparent about what we do, how we're paid, and our client retention rate for our local office is 98%. The industry average is right around 85%. So we don't just tell you what we're going to do it so that we can renew, get a service contract renewal.
Okay, I have another. Just to sort of get to the bottom line here, because we can, you know, kind of go through this as quickly as we can, and ask various questions, but to administration, this is for you. I'm sure with our current losses and the situation that we're in, not being approved again through our current insurance, in your expertise and the times that you've worked and what you have researched and met with Gallagher, what is the bottom line here and your recommendation? I would like to just lean heavily on that and the work that you all have done. Because we can ask a lot of questions and stuff like that here to get a better understanding, but we are only kind of ankle deep in it. You all are neck deep in it. So I will just, for me, rely on you all's recommendation and what you have done.
So thank you, Councilwoman Davis. Let me see if I can add some general context and then more specifics. We received written notice from Travelers Insurance a little over 30 days ago of their decision not to renew. We brought Gallagher on in January, and at that time, that decision was because we wanted to more effectively manage our risk management overall. We had no idea in January when we hired Gallagher, and we do believe they're qualified to do this work, that Travelers would decide not to renew. In the FY24 budget, with the support of council, we also moved risk management as a function from the clerk's office, where they did a good job there, but they primarily focused on just administrative, processing the claims, getting them to the insurance company. Risk management is more about the things I think you were just asking about: safety programs, ensuring that we are lowering our risk and lowering our claims. We thought a better way to do that was to move it to where it sits today in the Building and Operations Department under Dana Smith as director. And we created a risk management position that Ms. Felicia Jones now occupies, so that we could have a dedicated function, which the city previously did not have, to focus on this issue, to manage those claims. There are some claims that you can manage through better practice, safety, vehicle safety, things of that nature. Acts of nature, like the Campbell County Courthouse, those things occur. A fatal car accident, those things occur. You can't directly manage every claim, but the ones that we can manage through better practices is the reason we changed the way we approached risk management for the city. So once we were notified by Travelers, we had a little over, not quite 45 days to scramble and figure out where do we go. That is the part of the presentation when they listed all of the companies that Gallagher reached out to in an effort to simply transition us from Travelers to another insurance company, not unlike what happened when we went from United Healthcare to Cigna. That effort, unfortunately, did not prove to be fruitful. Why? Because of those losses we talked about earlier. I know there was a question earlier from Councilwoman Hudson about the public officials category, and Scott and Matt, public officials category loss that you referenced, was that in connection to the LGI lawsuit? Okay, so the LGI lawsuit, and I don't know to what degree Ms. Noel may have shared some light on that, began in the previous administration. It was a property administration issue. You may recall we had a hearing before council in 2022. It then went from there to an administrative hearing with the city administrator. It then went from there to Superior Court. And at the end of that legal fight, the judgment favored LGI. Now again, this began in the previous administration. It was over a subdivision in what are called vested rights. I don't want to go too far down that road because I don't have a law degree, but that ended up being yet another $1 million claim. So we had this public officials LGI lawsuit $1 million claim. We had a property nearly $1 million claim with the Campbell County Courthouse. Then we had a nearly $1 million claim with a fatal car accident. It's kind of a perfect storm of having all of these high dollar claims in a single year. All three of those happened in 2022. That's not normal. It does happen, but that's what happened that is probably, and again, I would ask Matt and Scott to kind of speak to this, was the largest driver of why we were not able to get other insurance companies. It's a pretty simple formula with insurance companies. How much are you paying us versus how much are we paying you? And anytime they're paying us more than we're paying them, that's when they decide we're not going to renew. So that's the basic context of how we arrived here. And again, we got the written notification from travelers in March. And so we have been day and night going through this. I literally got the last communication. Matt, I think you sent that last night about 8:30? Yes, sir. So less than 24 hours ago is when we got the final numbers to do this, because we were trying to beat every bush, check with every company, look for every option. Self-insurance is not an anomaly. There are other cities around it, and they can speak to that self-insure. The other dynamic in self-insurance, which they referenced earlier, is it does provide more control over claims management than when you defer that to an insurance company. We'll have to fund it differently. But even before travelers told us that they were not going to renew, we already knew that if any insurance company were to renew, it was going to be much higher than what we were paying because of those losses I talked about. So we were paying roughly, help me, Ms. Chris, about $600,000 a year. We knew that at a minimum in the open market was likely to double to at least 1.2 to 1.4 million. Now, actually, it went a little higher than that, and the estimates, had we been able to get insurance from one of those companies, would have been about 1.9 million. It would have almost tripled what we were paying in insurance. We're at a lower number now. We're a little, and I'll defer because I don't want to quote the numbers from memory. Ms. Chris, I'll defer to you. Do you know that number?
Which number, sir? I'm
The
sorry.
self-insured number. $957,000. 950. So we went from roughly 600,000 under the self-insurance program to 957,000. That would have been much higher than that on the open market because of that loss history that I talked about. What we've understood from talking to Gallagher and other cities that do self-insurance is that it is not common that once cities begin to self-insure, that they switch up a few years down the road and go back to a traditional insurance company. And the reason for that is it allows us to more effectively manage those claims. The city has the final decision on which claims go forward and which ones don't, as opposed to deferring that to an insurance company. So that's the context of how we got here and why this was the 11th hour, because literally we could not find an insurance company. And I've been having some conversations with the mayors, I typically do to keep them updated, but it was literally within the last 24 hours that we were able to solidify the final numbers so that we could self-insure. I'm confident that we can manage this effectively. The final number we came up with is an increase, definitely an increase. But that was going to be the case even on the traditional market. We were not going to get the same insurance rate even if we renewed with travelers. They chose not to, but had they chosen to renew, the likelihood is that it was at least going to double the premium rate. So I'll pause there. I know I shared a lot to see if anything I just said needs further clarification.
No, I mean, it was a great explanation, because like I said, you all have been dealing with this. And so I will just have to rely on you all's expertise and time involved in making this decision for the city.
Can I just add that administration has been working with Gallagher closely since January. I can tell you Matt found us at GCCMA in Athens in March and sat down with us to put together a story that he could tell the insurance companies about Fairburn in an efforts to reduce what that increase will look like. And with their efforts, the costs before you actually dropped by $200,000 as of last night. So I can just tell you that Gallagher has been a great partner that's been working actively for the city.
Awesome.
Mr. Whitmore, you had a question?
Yeah.
Yes, back to our consultants. And again, I know that you just said my city administrator just indicated he just got it about 7:30, 8:30 last night. And that's why I've kind of been driving home. I know staff's been working on it, but I still like asking questions of my consultants because y'all have a lot of additional information that could be helpful. And sometimes when you hear certain things, it may trigger something else. So with this self-insurance, I think what I heard, well, not self-insurance, but with the claims admin, within Gallagher. I think I also heard that you do provide some additional training, informational training to help us with various areas of working with our insurance claims and so on and so forth?
Yes, sir, Mr. Whitmore. And I would like to say to your, you'd like me to ask the questions, as I like to tell our clients all the time, I work for you. Ask all the questions you like. No.
I shall.
Yes, sir. We have there's, if you go to page, I threw an item in here, again, for information, page 13. This is a sampling of the training and consulting that is available specific to risk and safety. This is just a sampling of what's available. You have access to an online training platform through Gallagher that has a library of trainings. We do on-site, online, on-demand trainings. I like to tell people that we even do chainsaw training. I learned that recently, that we have, not in the field, but chainsaw safety training. Our risk control consultants can provide that, and I use that as a little bit of levity and color, that we have the way we reference our practice group early on. That Scott and I are with our practice group. Our leadership are former risk managers for counties, cities, school districts, and everything of the like. We are led by practitioners that have sat in the seat of getting this stuff, of doing this work, so they know what are the trainings that are necessary. What do we need to talk about? Do we need to talk about slips, trips, and falls? Do we need to talk about distracted driver training? Backing up. That's where a lot of auto losses come from. Do we need to talk about how does immunity work? Do we need to talk about how do you enter into contracts? Do we need to do training around workplace violence, training around power tools, training around discrimination, harassment training? There is an entire library through our National Risk Control Group, which is no additional cost. This is included in our standard normal compensation of bring all that in. So when we talk about are we going to be able to provide resources and training to that $368,000 loss pick number, bring that down? Absolutely. We have the resources available to it. If there's something that you, Mr. Whitmore, think that you'd like to hear about, we can provide likely a training and consultation on that. We do training for staff, for boots on the ground. We can also provide training to mayor and council as well in certain areas. We have done that before.
That's great. Let me drill down just a little bit more, and that is we have a fleet of vehicles here in our city, and what is the market equivalent of managing the fleet? My example would be GPS on the vehicles. Therefore, if they do have an accident or if they got stopped or whatever, now you have that data available to you. There may be some additional employee training that may be needed and so on and so forth, or if they were involved in an accident. I'm asking that question because I know at one point in time, we did have that on our vehicles, but we no longer have them. And we were able to identify people that were out of the geographical area of the city. And I was just wondering, how does that come into play in an evaluation?
A market evaluation or a risk evaluation?
Both.
Okay, so market evaluation, it's really driven by losses. Because if you are driving better, obviously losses come down. And
Right.
what you're talking about is really telematics. Because there's the GPS, but then there's also the ability to see how fast are people driving. There are resources out there. Gallagher actually has, through our National Risk Control Group, specific partnerships with companies where there's specialty pricing for being a Gallagher client for telematics on vehicles that talk about you know, hitting brakes, talk about speeding, talk about, you know, everything. If you want to go the full UPS route, talk about right turns versus left turns. I mean, you can get very granular with that. But it really starts with doing an evaluation of your fleet safety. What are we doing today? That's kind of the benchmark, the benchline, you know, the baseline. What are we doing today? What are we doing that's good? What are we doing that we can improve upon? Because we want to make sure we solidify the good and find those opportunities. You know, the past few months, as you can see, have been very focused on the renewal because it has been very challenging to get this piece done. But one of the things I remember that Dana Smith, I think the first time I said fleet safety, his eyes lit up. He got really excited about a fleet safety program. We've done this for others, and so we'll do a full evaluation. And the reason that this last page is on here about all the stuff we do is because we document. We document what we say we're going to do so that when we do our stewardship meetings, Mr. Phillips can say, did you do it? What were the results? So mayor and council can say, next year, hey, Matt, Scott, you guys came up here, did a great song and dance for us. You said you're going to do a whole bunch of stuff in here. What did you do? We document that so that we can show our work. Because we want you to know, Scott talked about transparency. We've won a lot of awards. Gallagher as a company has won a lot of awards based on our transparency and the way that we operate, the way that we do business. Because one of the number one things for us in the public sector is everybody talks. Our reputation is everything here. So if we say we're going to do something for you, we need to do it. And so that's why we document it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And also, out of curiosity, I'm looking at your municipal authorities that you have listed here.
Sir.
And on the IT level, cybersecurity, ransomware, so on and so forth, has any of these cities been hit with any of that?
I can't really comment on that
I know of some just in public.
No, I know, but I can't, especially
understand.
just in public forum, I can't really comment on that.
I got you.
You can Google, but
You basically answered for me.
I can't.
Indirectly.
Up or down, I can't comment on that.
Right.
Ms. Hudson.
I had my hand raised for a different reason, but this is actually for our administration. What Gallagher is offering is definitely a necessary thing for Fairburn. We're gonna have to stop backpedaling because a lot of what has happened is due to our lack of managing. I don't want to keep hearing about the last administration. We're here today. And these losses could have been stopped. And I watched this LGI lawsuit come to fruition. It was a political ploy during an election time. But we're here today. And I came here today in spite of having to reconstruct my entire life for a special call meeting. This should have been on a regular meeting agenda. This is a lot of information to take in. And our city deserves this council to make informed decisions, timely information. This is a pattern. So relying on this information today is not going to get me where I need to be, right? And so my peer spoke about the training to reduce loss. Excuse me. I'm grieved. I'm very grieved in my spirit today. I'm grieved in my spirit today because I came here and I want to do the business for this city and our staff. I have not received timely information, and to walk in here for a special call meeting that should have been on a regular meeting, and with the excuse that it missed the deadline, and our city is affording an executive assistant, assistant administrator to get this done, to me, and I still don't have enough information to make a decision. I'm grieved about that, okay? And so I'm going to have to continue to review this information. Gallagher has really came in and opened up, as they say, the coffin. Unfortunately, it's there. We got to look at it. On top of looking at why we are here. We have some practice issues and some decisions to make about what is bringing Fairburn here. And so that's the bottom line for me. That's what we got to get to the bottom line, because I'm shook by the consequence that the taxpayers are going to have to endure for this. Because our house, this city, our administration, this council have to do our due diligence to ensure that we redirect the practice, that our taxpayers don't have to keep suffering. And this is what this is about. I didn't come here to hold you guys hostage with complaints, but I have to speak truth to power tonight. What I had to go through to get to this meeting, when this could have been on a regular scheduled meeting, and this information being given to us, you guys been meeting with Gallagher since January. We had a whole retreat. That would have been the perfect opportunity to bring Gallagher in and walk us through us, and somebody new like me wouldn't have had a leg to stand on. And so with that being said, Gallagher, you've done what you were supposed to do, and I thank you for that. But I have to make a decision, and tonight I'm not prepared to make that decision. I am not prepared tonight because I got a booklet in my face when I walked in here today, and I'm expected to vote on this. I'm sorry, I cannot.
Mayor,
Mr. Whitmore, go ahead, sir.
I can tell you what I heard, administration. I heard that you were communicating with Gallagher since January. I heard with less than 45 days ago, we found out that we're not going to be reinsured. And here's a list of markets that the city looked at under Gallagher, and we didn't get any bites whatsoever. And I also heard that within the last hour, the 9th hour, 23rd hour, 8:30 last night, is when this package was finalized. There's a lot of information in here, yes, but the choice that we have before us as elected officials is if we vote it down, we have no coverage, none whatsoever. So we're going to find ourselves in a very bad situation if something happens. I think it's incumbent upon us as elected officials when things are brought before us. You know, I had another schedule as well, but I juggled and I'm here. I'm here because I'm an elected official, the people that voted for me and the people that didn't. I'm here because I represent all of the citizens here in this great city. So with that, I will say, Gallagher, I appreciate the information. I appreciate your honesty and your ability to articulate, even answering the questions that you answered. And I'm sure it sparked additional questions with some of my colleagues, and you still answered those as well. But I don't want to sit here and blame staff for not bringing something to a retreat when at that point in time, we weren't in a position where we knew we weren't going to have coverage. So you have to look at everything holistically versus trying to pinpoint blame. I'm not pinpointing blame. I'm saying, what do we do to move forward as a body and as a city? That's why I'm here. That's why I speak up, because my voice needs to be heard as well. And I think that we're doing what we need to do. And Mayor, I'm ready to vote.
I have a quick follow-up.
No. You, Miss Hudson, you're out of order.
You are out of order.
No, I'm not going to ask you to be quiet.
I had a quick follow-up.
You may have one.
Address
but
me.
I have the floor, Miss Hudson. I need you to be quiet. Miss Davis, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor.
Ask you to be quiet. You're out of order.
You out of order.
Okay, Ms. Davis, Ms. Hudson, I'm not going to ask you again to be quiet. Please, you're out of order. I'm not going to ask you again. Go ahead, Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say to our administration, under the conditions that you had to go out to market and to find the best that we could have right now at this last hour, I appreciate your efforts. I appreciate you bringing on Gallagher in January before we even knew Travelers was not going to renew our insurance, so they could help us and expedite it. And I don't even know the countless amount of hours that, in addition to the regular things that you have to do during the day, answer emails from communities that are not paying attention to council meetings, and you have to reiterate information that was already given out. So I want to thank you for the diligence, and you're consistent with it. And sometimes being in this position, you just got to do your job. And sometimes it could be inconvenient. But this is the price you pay for being in this position. We cannot allow this city not to have liability insurance. We cannot, and we will not. Thank you.
Let me, Mr. Go ahead, Mr. Heath, and then I'll ask, and then I'll come back to Ms. Hudson after that. Go ahead, Ms. Heath.
Yes, sir. My thing is that having been in the insurance business at one time myself, I know all the things that they were talking about is obviously a truth that can't be denied. If a city does not have insurance and one of our vehicles go out here and hits a pedestrian or something along those lines, you're talking about multi-millions of dollars, not just the figure that we were talking about here for a premium. But the simple fact of the matter is that we have got to keep our city covered by insurance. I know from my wife had an accident in our vehicle, and the insurance company that we had denied renewing because of the amount of money that was shelled out during that incident. So for the incidents that's taken place, whether it's the LPG or whatever it was, these are multi-millions of dollars that the city, that the people of the city did not have to worry about because it was covered by an insurance policy. And so therefore, I'm ready to vote, and we cannot go without insurance. Thank you.
Yeah, let me say this, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, the scenario where we find ourselves as it relates to some of the various claims, again, questions as relates, comments relating to talking about the last administration. Ladies and gentlemen, I took over for Mayor Hanna. That was issued in 2010. There were issues that rolled over from a previous administration, good and bad. So to sit here and think that you're not going to address issues, whoever becomes the mayor after me, they're going to deal with issues that come up. Welcome to real government. And number one, let me commend our staff and our city attorney's office as a result of dealing with as much as they could. If I remember correctly, in January, Mr. City Manager, I think we had 2 weeks. We found out, and the developer told us that they were due a legal hearing. This is 2 weeks upon arrival. And the city attorney, the first job was, you basically you found a way to construct a proper hearing to ensure, to give that developer due process. Whether we win or lose, I said, that's up to the court. But I said, but one thing we will not be able to say is that we did not give the developer due process. This was realized with that, but I want to say within the first 10 days of the administration. So again, that's no knock on Mayor Hirsch's administration. That's just things that roll over from one administration to the next. As relates to the services in this case, again, with the place we find ourselves looking for insurance, the conditions that we have, ladies and gentlemen, nobody can control a fire in a building. Nobody can control a gentleman getting killed in a car accident. Welcome to real life in government. Okay, and so one of the things that I've come, again, and Mr. Whitmore put it well, we were elected to address the issue. I was just as inconvenient. I had somewhere I was supposed to be. But guess what? Welcome to real government, and welcome to being put in position sometimes where you have to put your fiduciary duty over your personal freaking life. Okay? And so as a result of that, what I'm not going to prolong it because, again, I'm going to yield back to Ms. Hudson. But let me say this, ladies and gentlemen, I want to commend the staff that's gone beyond the call of duty. Again, a lot of the issues that we're trying to bring up, again, I can go straight down the list from the situation where our trash vendor told us upon arrival, I'm not going to renew I can go straight down the list of item after item that we were told. Again, there's no way the word a former mayor would know that the former trash collector would tell us that we're gonna terminate for year one, there's no one in the world for her to know that or me. But guess what? That's our responsibility. When we're handed these limits, we've got to make lemonade out of as much as we can, and that's what this government has tried to do. I want to commend members of council that has gone beyond the call of duty to ensure that we address issues a whole lot better than some of our neighboring cities that's in the news all the time, because again, they can't even come in agreement to bring a company like Gallagher here. So let me just again thank you, members of council. Ms. Hudson, you have the floor again.
Yes, thank you. And what I'm not going to do is defend my premise and purpose for being elected on this council. That's the bottom line. And what I stated, I stand on what I state. I know what my fiduciary responsibility is, and it is the responsibility of this government to be transparent and to provide information in a timely manner. Now, if that's the practice of members, of peers that have been on previous years, then kudos to you. But as for me, I will not be browbeat into a vote because I don't have the proper information with a history of 4 months of requesting documents from this government, and I get financial information 1 hour before I attend a meeting. Let's be clear. I am here for the city of Fairburn, the people, the residents, and this staff. I have diligently and continue to work, review, research information that I can make informed decisions and choices for this city, and I will not defend why I was elected. I'm here for the work. I'm here for the people. Let's do the work. Give me the information that I need in a timely fashion, and I will.
As a call for question that's been actually brought to the floor. Members of council, a call to question in this case, you have to actually vote. You have to vote on the call to question. It simply means you're saying that you agree that you're ready for the vote. Members of council, you have a motion before you, a call to question. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and properly second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Oppose.
That motion carries. Now, the item on the floor before you, members of council, you have before you the item that's been read by go ahead, Ms. Go ahead and read the item.
The second item is physical.
No, go ahead. Yes, ma'am. Now we're voting on the insurance.
Hold on. The motion, let me read your closing. Motion will read, request approval from mayor and council to authorize the recommended liability insurance renewal plan, which includes a transition to a self-insured liability insurance renewal for the fiscal year 24-25 renewal period, and to authorize the mayor to execute the third-party claims administration agreement with Gallagher Bassett Services related to this renewal.
That motion, item that's been read, is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made and properly second. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed?
Oppose.
That motion carries. Next item.
The next item is fiscal year 2023-2024 mid-year budget amendment. This is a recommendation for mayor and council to approve the proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 mid-year budget amendment. The finance director, Mr. Brian Stevens.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening. Good evening, sir.
I come to you today with our first budget amendment for this fiscal year. This is our mid-year amendment. Okay. I just want to start by saying we did get our audit this morning. It's posted on our website, and we've already discussed the items behind it, but I'll be glad to present on that in a future date. I wanted to start this with an update of our fund balance now that we have audited numbers here. Our general fund balance as of September 30th, 2022 was $20,978,203. Since this audit is now complete, our fund balance grew by over $3 million last year, which is a testimony to all of our directors and the managing of the budget throughout the year. As you know, our policy, our fund balance policy states that we have 3 months of restricted funds in our fund balance. That 3 months of restricted funds is $11,260,544, which leaves the unrestricted fund balance at $12,803,747. When we passed the fiscal year 23-24 budget, we decided to use $2,068,360 of fund balance to cover capital projects. This mid-year amendment is a little over $3 million, $3,005,894. And the projection is at the end of this fiscal year, our unrestricted fund balance would be $7,729,493. So for our mid-year amendment, and we do have all of our directors here, if there are any questions, I would just kind of approach it from a high level and just kind of walk through these department totals of what we're adding at mid-year. And again, if you have questions, feel free to stop me or pause, and we can go like that.
Okay.
For the police, $139,445. For the city administrator budget, $198,300.
Excuse me, Mayor, I need to know the process. We have two, the building operations personnel and the police department has gotten
Okay, Mr.
presentations, so.
So those are
do I
for
ask-
the new positions. Those are the only two budgets that are asking for new positions in this mid-year amendment.
Are they going to present, or do I ask the questions of you?
They're here, they can present.
Okay,
You want to ask them now, or?
yes,
Yes,
yes.
ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
The two positions that the police department is requesting is specifically for a training lieutenant as well as a corporal to fall underneath that position. Currently, the police department has training duties split between 3 different people. We'd like to have one person dedicated full-time to do the training. The unit is also intended to be a hybrid traffic unit. Right now, the patrol division handles all calls for services, including car accidents. We'd like to get a dedicated traffic unit to be able to work those accidents and relieve patrol division, giving them more time to patrol.
Okay, Chief,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, can you, and you may have just presented that already, but can you tell me the difference between the police lieutenant and the police corporal?
It's just a matter of rank. We have a number of, we are a paramilitary structure when it comes to our rank structure. Lieutenant falls underneath a captain. Corporal falls underneath a sergeant.
Okay. Now, these will be new hires.
So these will be shifted from existing people, and that will create a domino effect that rolls down that will lead to the hire of 2 new officers, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes a difference.
Yes, ma'am.
Then, okay. So, another question I want to ask you, if we could not fund these positions right now and can maybe fund them in 6 more months, what challenge would that present your department?
Well, we're working through a lot of change in terms of centralizing different roles within the PD. The 3 different people doing the training has been a bit of an issue for us. I've got one person who teaches taser, one person who teaches firearms, one person who teaches use of force. And by having 3 different spots where those records are kept and different instructors, I'd like to just centralize that so one person is doing it. Because a lot of the training we do is required either by state law or by our own SOP. So that training, like I said, those records are very important. I want to make sure we have those in a secure place. And to answer your question, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but these positions would be very helpful.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Whitmore?
Hey, Chief, how you doing?
Hey, sir, how are you?
So these 2 new positions, even though they're training, but they'll also be utilized in other official police capacities?
Yes, they will also be the beginning of what I'd like to see as a permanent traffic unit, specifically for the car accidents. We do have a lot of highways in Fairburn, and we do have our fair share of car accidents. And every time an officer has to handle a car accident who's assigned to uniform patrol division, he's not patrolling, he's not in the neighborhoods, he's not checking our businesses. And car accidents can, depending on the severity, take anywhere from 45 minutes to several hours to get cleared. And that means that officer is not in his or her zone. So the car accidents are a big reason why I'd like this initially to be a training hybrid traffic unit. So if they're not doing training, they're out there working traffic, specifically car accidents.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, based on based on the city of Fairburn's citizens that we have, are we at the correct ratio per officer per X amount of citizens in the city of Fairburn?
So we're actually preparing a document that will run through city administration. The IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, has a formula that they use for size of your population and the recommended number of officers. I don't want to put a number out just yet until I've got that document finalized, but I would like to see growth in the PD. I do think we need to, as we move into the future, continue to grow the department and add more officers. But I don't want to lock myself into a number just yet without a document in front of me.
All right, thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Heath, you had a question?
Yeah, what happened to your FTO program?
We still have that, sir. Every new hire goes through the FTO Field Training Officer Program, and that is still in place. So those training records are yet another set of records that we have to be kept and maintained for every officer. So that responsibility also falls on one of my 3 people who does training, yet another area that, again, it would be nice to have everything in one place.
Now, what about your officers? How many do you have FTO-wise?
That's a good question. I don't have that number off the top of your head. Certified FTOs that have been through the school, I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can get you that information.
Okay, and another thing, usually, if an FTO, certified of course, is doing training with a raw recruit fresh out of the academy, usually you want them to get acclimated to the accidents and just handling all different types of things. Of course, I was an FTO for 22 years, so I trained quite a few people. But the thing of it is that when you got 2 people that are dedicated to doing that, then that seems like that limits what they are. I mean, you may need officers out to do patrol the streets, but then when you dedicate 2 officers to just doing the FTO's job, basically, then it is limiting to me the amount of personnel that you have out on the street.
I see your point. Let me clarify. The FTO program will not change in terms of how we have a good number of field training officers who train recruits. There's also a rotation process. So every officer trains with generally at least 3 different police officers during their training program. The training I'm talking about is more like the use of force training we do, firearms training, annual TASER recertification training, some of the different things we've done, as was mentioned with active shooter training, where we can do some exercises and the things we're talking about that. So the FTO program will still be managed at the individual level. So the 10 or 12 FTOs we have will still continue training new recruits. But from a 30,000-foot view, that the program itself would be administered, by a training lieutenant.
Sure. Okay. Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Wanted to brief you all on what we're asking for fire, which was already approved in the previous budget, for the new 9 positions for the new station and the temp station. As you all know, we've grown tremendously with the call volume, and this is gonna double our coverage for the growth of the city. So that's with the 9 new positions, which would be the 3 sergeants and the 6 firefighters.
Okay.
Got it.
Anything?
Next.
Question.
Okay, go ahead, sir. Yes, sir.
Just one question, and I guess that would be for city administration. Can you give us an update on the temporary fire station? Dana.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Temporary fire station. So we have made some progress on temporary fire station. I'm happy to announce that we'll reach a milestone of putting in the water meters in the vaults in a few weeks in May. From there, we have to run some more water line and some sewer, which we're looking to get done, and if all things work out with procurement-wise, in the next 30 days thereafter.
Okay. And also, can you give us a little update on our new fire station?
Sure, absolutely. The fire station is making good progress. If you drive down Milam Road today, you will see the footings have been poured. You'll see some masonry block going up. We are looking to still stay on pace to open up by the end of the year. We're doing good in a couple of weeks, probably by the end of May, we'll see some steel.
All right, thank you.
Okay, you, sir? Okay.
Yes, so there's one new position that building operations is asking for, and to be filled in the mid-year budget. This is for a senior building and maintenance technician. Currently, we have 2 building and maintenance technician. I would tell you from an industry basis, the city has, which was documented by FCA, over 160,000 square feet of building square footage. We have over 130,000 square feet of active space with only 2 building and maintenance technicians. We like to keep that ratio in the industry between around 30 square feet per tech. So this position would help bring us more into alignment with industry standard, having the right amount of techs for the square footage that we have right now to be able to provide the service that we need to the city and to the staff. Also, because, as Mayor and Council knows, we've discussed the infrastructure issues we have with our current assets that require more effort and work. That was the nature behind the request for the additional position to be filled after Mayor and Council approval.
Any questions for the building manager? Go ahead, Ms. Davis.
And yes, I would ask you the same question I asked the chief. Would it pose a great challenge for you if this was delayed until our new budget?
The short answer is yes, ma'am. We will make work whatever we get. I tell Mr. Phillips, Ms. Chris, that building operations will make it work. But to be honest, we saw the strain that it put on my staff doing the renovations and trying to fill the requests for my fellow colleagues. And it also can tell you it took us some time to fill the position that was budgeted for this year, several months to get that working with HR. So that is the other reason why we're asking for it now.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question from council for this director? Let me ask you a question about regarding the issue as it relates to, you saying it took you a while to, was it because of the quality of personnel that applied, or what basically why was that such a problem?
Yes, sir. It was a combination of some of the personnel that applied and the various job boards that we had to reach out to. We actually, to get the individual we have now, reached out to not only the usual Indeed, we went to some building maintenance job boards, building and Operators and Owners of America Association. We went out to them, International Managed Facility Association job boards, and posted there in particular to try to find the right individuals for our team.
Yes, go ahead.
Mayor, what I would add to that is that the skill set that is needed in the positions that Mr. Smith is talking about often are challenging for municipalities because there's private sector competition. So folks who do these types of building management functions and have the skill set to affect effective preventative maintenance and maintain, and by the way, it is a long-term cost savings issues. The better we maintain our facilities, the better we protect the investment that our taxpayers have made. And so it becomes challenging to find folks in a municipal hiring process when they have a lot of private sector opportunities that sometimes the compensation level there is a challenge. And so that's another factor that contributes to hiring quality staff, and we're committed to doing that. And so I know that Dana went through a couple of iterations of interviews and didn't settle, didn't hire someone that was below what we thought was appropriate for that position. We have a successful candidate who's hit the ground running and is doing very well in the position he just referenced, but those positions have a longer lead time to find qualified candidates.
I would also add to Mr. Phillips that one of the things that we try to strategize here is just not building maintenance technicians, but our specialists also self-perform some of the work that gets done, like the renovations to the admin building. So it's not just, fix a door handle, can you put up a wall? And that's what our team can do. Yeah. That's what also sets us apart from some of the other techs that just, hey, I changed out a light bulb.
I just wanted to, and I know all of you have probably heard this previously in some form, the building that we recently renovated, conservatively, the work that city staff, specifically Tim and Cody, did on that building conservatively saved taxpayers $500,000. Wow. Had we had to go out and hire a private sector contractor to literally come in and construct offices and do all of that, that would have been a more significant cost. And so having competent skill sets in those types of positions does provide cost savings.
Go ahead, Mr. Heath.
My question is, the retention wall for $150,000, where is that located at?
Oh, that's-
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Councilman Heath, that retention wall is located at Northeast Broad and Fayetteville Road. It is erosion that is happening in that area, so we have to put the retention wall up to kind of keep that from continuing, and it's eroding at a pretty rapid rate.
Got it. Thank you so
I
much.
think Lester might want to, Lester, you,
Well, you can come up and talk. Come on.
It was an erosion issue with the embankment and the right-of-way on Fayetteville Road, so we had Ponding Company and Atlas come out and do some geotechnical research on it, and they found that that retaining wall was the best option, so some structural engineers designed the wall, and since that was, the owner reached out because he was afraid of his house slipping off the side of the slope right there, so it was a issue to kind of a risk aversion issue that we need to take care of, so that's why it's being brought forth now.
It was in the city's right-of-way, which makes it our responsibility to address that, but it had the potential to affect a private homeowner. And so we needed to be very responsive, and Lester, in partnership with Gail, came up with an engineered solution through POND, because we don't want something in the public right-of-way to affect a private homeowner's property.
Yes.
That's one of my questions, too.
okay, go ahead, finish it, sir.
So I did want to, we were going through each department. I want to open it up now. If anyone has any more questions with regards to any of the department totals that we see here. One thing I know that's a little bit different than what we talked about at our retreat was the public safety complex design.
My question.
That's why Dana's still here. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So just quickly, though, technology, planning and zoning, code enforcement, general services. I will say on the summary sheet, you do see an increase in all departments. That's for the group insurance for Cigna, where we had to take on additional costs. But these individual departments are the ones requesting increases for the rest of the year. So are there any other questions about any of these other departments before we move to public safety design?
Any member of council? Okay, go ahead, sir.
Good evening again. So yes, the public safety design we discussed at the retreat with Mayor and Council. We provided you with context that we would be looking for additional funds at the mid-year budget. That estimate was based on our initial budget for the cost of the complex and what our design consultant provided us based on the drawdowns for design, which was, at the original time, was around $15 million. After we went through the first phase of design, through the programming phase, as we call it, that cost rose based on the programming to what is now $19 million. So the additional ask in the budget is for the difference, because with the increase of the cost, there's also and feedback from Mayor and Council from the retreat about doing it all at one time and getting everything done to, of course, save an economy to scale. That now has put more money into the design and doing more things in this phase, in the design phase, including this year. So that's why there's an additional cost due to the increase of what we perceive the estimated cost of construction to be, and to get this all done at one time. Our consultant came back and provided another estimate, and that was reflected in that's the increase from what you saw a couple of months ago.
Now, I asked the city manager this morning, so I mean, I understand it, but I think, would you just explain, this morning I asked him about what was the procurement mechanism we were gonna use, as I kind of figured, he said design build in this case. Would you just explain to members of council what that actually means?
Sure. So with this process, we want to, we're recommending using what we call a CM at risk process. So we already have a design team on board through an RFP process that we already did. The CM at risk, or construction manager at risk process, is similar to what design build, what the mayor mentioned, but the one difference is that in the design build, you may hire one entity, like an architect or a construction company, and they may hire the other one, or they may come together as a joint venture and design and build and work in tandem together from the very beginning. In the CM at risk model that we have here, we have a design team that has a direct contract with the city. We'll have a construction manager that has that same direct contract with the city, but they'll be brought on earlier in on the design process to be able to contribute to design, provide more realistic estimated costs, and go immediately into construction. Also, the CM at risk means that this construction manager will provide us a maximum price estimate for the project. When they get on board and we get through the design, there'll be a ways through the design, I should say, not totally. They'll give us that what we call GMP, guaranteed maximum price, of this is what we think is going to take to construct this project. And we'll be locked in contractually with that contractor for that price, as well as the price we already have with our design consultant.
And before I move on, members of council, just for clarification purposes too, again, this CM at risk mechanism that's used now, it's kind of become a more prominent form of, actually it's being used, for, a lot of you may be familiar right there at, goodness gracious, Metropolitan and, goodness gracious, Cleveland, that's being constructed at the Fulton County Health Center, a major project. Actually, many of you guys know the prime contractors, in this case it's Michael Hightower and Hogan Construction, is actually a form of a joint venture. So that, again, I just want to make it clear, that's a new standard practice type of procurement. It's complicated. I'm not even saying pretend. It's complicated, but I wanted them to explain that because I need you to understand the work that goes into finding a proper construction manager in this case. So there's any member of council got it. Go ahead, sir.
No question, just a comment. I appreciate staff listening during the retreat, listening to the economy of scale, doing everything at one time versus phase one, phase two. Doing it that way, I know it was going to cost the city more, but just to add on $4 million versus another $15 million, my estimate, is a big significant savings. So thank you for listening and going back to the drawing board and bringing that information forward.
Sir. Okay. Are you any more, sir? Mr. Council, go ahead, Ms. Clerk. You can read the item and then I bring it to the floor for a vote.
Wait, what are we doing?
In this case, voting on the mid-year amendment. Go ahead, Ms. I would just read. Members of council, you have before your request for mayor and council to approve a proposed 2023-2024 mid-year budget amendment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments by council?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
There is another, another increase here under the utilities, electric, the infrastructure amount.
Sure.
During the retreat, it was 75,000. Now it's 175,267. It's an additional 100,000.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
The $100,000 that has been allotted is for the public road safety and security project on Johns River Road. And the additional money was needed to give to Greystone Power to upgrade their power poles, to make room for the lighting and the transformation to keep the project in line.
Any other questions, members of council? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Abstain for, I need to read this into the record, Madam Clerk. The last vote, please change from no to abstain for lack of knowledge. Today, I'm abstaining from voting on the mid-year amended budget due to the city administrator and legal counsel at the direction of the mayor to withhold requested financial information not allows me to cast an informed vote. The voters of this city elected me to serve as their trustee. Voting uninformed is a breach of my duty as an elected member of this governing body. These actions by the city administrator and legal counsel under the direction of the mayor does not disenfranchise me as a council member. It disenfranchises the voters who elected me. Furthermore, these actions obstruct my role as a council member, which obstructs voting informed. I respectfully renew my request for records. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All in favor say, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion carries. Next. Members of council, can I entertain a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.